Continuing to read the Equal Credit Opportunity Act in the new reference guide to regulatory compliance on PDF page 111, I ended at letter E, special purpose credit. Federal regulations define special purpose credit to include any credit assistance program authorized by federal or state law for the benefit of an economically disadvantaged class of persons. 2, any credit assistance program offered by a not-for-profit organization for the benefit of its members or for the benefit of an economically disadvantaged class of persons. 3, any special purpose credit program offered by a for-profit organization to meet special social needs. Special purpose credit program. So we were talking about social needs. Of economic, special purpose credit program offered by a for-profit organization to meet special social needs if the program is established and administered under a written plan that identifies the class of persons that the program is designed to benefit and sets forth the procedures and standards for extending credit pursuant to the program. And B, the program is established and administered to extend credit to a class of persons who probably would not receive credit or would receive it on less favorable terms than are ordinarily available to other applicants. 4, under special purpose credits, a special purpose credit program must not discriminate on a prohibited basis. However, it can require its participants to share particular characteristics such as race or sex, provided the requirement was not established to evade the requirements of ECOA of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. If the participants must share a common characteristic, the bank may collect information as that characteristic may define eligibility. If the program includes financial need as a criterion, the creditor may request and consider information regarding the applicant's marital status, alimony, child support, and separate maintenance income, and the spouse's financial resources. The creditor may also obtain the signature of the applicant's spouse or other person on an application or credit instrument if it is required by federal or state law. Required notifications. Now we're in the subpart F, discussing adverse action notices. The definition of an adverse action includes 1 through 4. Roman numeral 1, the refusal to grant credit in substantially the amount or on substantially the terms requested in an application unless the creditor makes a counteroffer that is accepted by the applicant. Roman numeral 2, I don't like that definition. A termination of the account or an unfavorable change in the terms of an account unless the change affects substantially all of the lender's accounts of that type. Roman numeral 3, a refusal to increase the amount of credit available to an applicant who has made an application for an increase. Roman numeral 4, a counteroffer to grant credit in substantially different amount or terms requested that is rejected by the applicant. Letter B, none of the following would constitute an adverse action. That's the change in the terms of an account expressly agreed to by the applicant. Any action or forbearance relating to an account taken in connection with default, delinquency, or inactivity. Roman numeral 3, a refusal or failure to authorize a point-of-sale transaction unless it is a termination or unfavorable change in the account terms that does not affect all accounts of that type. Roman numeral 4, a refusal to extend credit because it is prohibited by law. Roman numeral 5, a refusal to extend credit because the lender does not offer credit of the type requested by the applicant. And a counteroffer of credit that is accepted by the applicant. 2 notice requirements. A, creditor must notify an applicant of action taken on the application within 30 days after receiving a completed application. Roman numeral 2, 30 days after taking adverse action on an incomplete application. Alternatively, if the application is denied because of incompleteness, the creditor may give a notice of incompleteness. Roman numeral 3, 30 days after taking adverse action on an existing account. And Roman numeral 4, 90 days after notifying the applicant of a counteroffer if not expressly accepted. So these are the notice requirements for adverse action. The creditor must notify an applicant of action taken on an application within 30 days of receiving a complete application, or 30 days of taking adverse action on an incomplete application. Alternatively, if the application is denied because of incompleteness, the creditor may give a notice of incompleteness, and 30 days after taking adverse action on an existing account, or 90 days after notifying the applicant of a counteroffer if not expressly accepted. Approvals can be communicated orally, in writing, or by implication. Withdrawal applications. No notice need be sent to an applicant who has withdrawn an application. An application is withdrawn if the applicant expressly withdraws it, or if the lender approves the application and expects the applicant to contact the lender about status and the applicant failed to do so. After how many days? D. Multiple applicants. Notification need only be given to one applicant, but it must be the primary applicant if known. Applications submitted through third parties. Each creditor who adversely acts on the application must send an adverse action notice. F. Content of notification to consumers. Must be in writing. If the application is taken by telephone, must request the applicant's name and address for purposes of sending the notice. Roman numeral 2 must contain the following: a statement of the action taken, the name and address of the creditor, an ECOA notice, the name and address of the federal agency that administers creditors' compliance with ECOA, statement of the specific reasons for the adverse action, or a disclosure of the applicant's right to receive the specific reasons within 30 days of the request. The request for specific reasons must be made within 60 days of the transmission of the adverse action notice. Roman numeral 3, specific statements should include principal reason or reasons for the action. Statements that the action was based on internal credit policies are insufficient. Statements that the guarantor did not meet the creditor standards or did not have a qualifying credit score are insufficient. And Roman numeral 4, the disclosure of more than 4 reasons is not likely to be helpful to the applicant. Reasons must relate to and accurately describe factors considered or scored by the creditor. Let me just retract here. You're allowed to give 5 reasons if one of those reasons relates to multiple credit inquiries within a short time frame. If that's one of the reasons, you may give 5. I feel that this is a little brief, so I am working on pulling up Reg B from the Electronic Code of Federal Regulations about notifications. So at this time I'm just going to move over to another source. According to the CFPB's Chapter 1002.9 notifications, A. Notification of action taken, ECOA notice, and statement of specific reasons. Number 1. When notification is required, a creditor shall notify an applicant of action taken within 30 days after receiving a completed application concerning the creditor's approval of, counteroffer to, or adverse action on the application. 30 days after taking adverse action on an incomplete application, unless notice is provided in accordance with paragraph C of this section. 30 days after taking adverse action on an existing account, and 90 days after notifying the applicant of a counter offer if the applicant does not expressly accept or use the credit offered. Number 2, content of notification when adverse action is taken. A notification is given to an applicant when adverse action is taken shall be in writing and shall contain a statement of the action taken, the name and address of the creditor, a statement of the provisions of Section 701A of the Act, the name and address of the federal agency that administers compliance with respect to the creditor, and either 1, a statement of specific reasons for the action taken, or 2, a disclosure of the applicant's right to a statement of specific reasons within 30 days. If the statement is requested within 60 days of the creditor's notification, the disclosure shall include the name, address, and telephone number of the person or office from which a statement of reasons can be obtained. If the creditor chooses to provide the reasons orally, the creditor shall also disclose the applicant's right to have them confirmed in writing within 30 days of receiving the applicant's written request for confirmation. Number 3, notification to business credit applicants. For business credit, a creditor shall comply with the notification requirements of this section in the following manner. Roman numeral 1, with regard to business is that had gross revenues of $1 million or less in its preceding fiscal year, other than an extension of trade credit incident to a factoring agreement, or other similar types of business credit, a creditor shall comply with paragraphs A1 and 2 of the section, except that the statement of the action taken may be given orally or in writing when adverse action is taken. And B, disclosure of an applicant's right to a statement of reasons may be given at the time of application instead of when adverse action is taken, provided the disclosure contains the information required by paragraph A2, Roman numeral 2 of this section, and the ECOA notice specified in paragraph B1 of this section. And further, the notification of adverse action for business credit requests is for an application made entirely by telephone. A creditor satisfies the requirement of this paragraph by an oral statement of the action taken and the applicant's right to a statement of reasons for adverse action. Roman numeral 2, with regard to a business that has gross revenues in excess of $1 million in its preceding fiscal year, or an extension of trade credit incident to a factoring agreement, or other similar types of business credit, a creditor shall notify the applicant within a reasonable time, orally or in writing, of the action taken, and provide a written statement of the reasons for the adverse action in the ECOA notice specified in paragraph B1 of the section if the applicant makes a written request for the reasons within 60 days of the creditor's notification. Letter B under the section 1002.9b, form of ECOA notice and statement of specific reasons. Number 1, ECOA notice. To satisfy the disclosure requirements of paragraph A2 of the section regarding 701A of the Act, the creditor shall provide a notice that is substantially similar to the following. Reading: the Federal Equal Credit Opportunity Act prohibits creditors from discriminating against credit applicants on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, sex, marital status, age, provided the applicant has the capacity to enter into a binding contract, because all or part of the applicant's income derives from any public assistance program, or because the applicant has in good faith exercised any right under the Consumer Credit Protection Act. The federal agency that administers compliance with this law concerning this credit is name and address of as specified by the appropriate agency or agencies listed in Appendix A of this part. Great, I'm totally going to look that up. Until January 1 of 2013, a creditor may comply with this paragraph B1 and paragraph A2 of the section by including in the notice the name and address as specified by the appropriate agency in Appendix A to Title 12 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 202, as in effect on October 1 of 2011. Number 2, statement of specific reasons. A statement of specific reasons for adverse action required by paragraph A2(1) of this section I of this section must be specific and indicate a principal reason or reasons for the adverse action. Statements that the adverse action was based on the creditor's internal standards or policies, or that the applicant, joint applicant, or similar party failed to achieve a qualifying score on the creditor's credit scoring system, are insufficient. C. Incomplete applications. Notice alternatives. Within 30 days after receiving an application that is incomplete regarding matters that an applicant can complete, the creditor shall notify the applicant either 1. Of action taken in accordance with paragraph A of the section, or Roman numeral 2 of the incompleteness in accordance with paragraph C2 of this section. Number 2, notice of incompleteness. If additional information is needed from an applicant, the creditor shall send a written notice to the applicant specifying the information needed, designating a reasonable period of time for the applicant to provide the information, and informing the applicant that failure to provide the information requested will result in no further consideration being given to the application. The creditor shall have no further obligation under this section if the applicant fails to respond within the designated time period. If the applicant supplies the requested information within the designated time period, the creditor shall take action on the application and notify the applicant in accordance with paragraph A of this section. Number 3, oral request for information. At its option, a creditor may inform the applicant orally of the need for additional information. If the application remains incomplete, the creditor shall send a notice in accordance with paragraph C1 of the section. Letter D, under 1002.9, oral notifications by small volume creditors. In the case of a creditor that's not received more than 150 applications during the preceding calendar year, the requirements of this section, including statements of specific reasons, are satisfied by oral notifications. Letter E, withdrawal of approved application. When an applicant submits an application and the parties contemplate that the applicant will inquire about its status, if the creditor approves the application and the applicant was not inquired within 30 days after applying, the creditor may treat the application as withdrawn and need not comply with paragraph A1 of this section. Letter F, multiple applicants. When an application involves more than one applicant, notification need only be given to one of them, but must be given to the primary applicant where one is readily apparent. And G, applications submitted through a third party. When an application is made on behalf of an applicant to more than one creditor, and this applicant expressly accepts or uses credit offered by one of the creditors, notification of action taken by any of the other creditors not required. If no credit is offered, or if the applicant does not expressly accept or use the credit offered, each creditor taking adverse action must comply with this section directly or through a third party. A notice given by a third party shall disclose the identity of each creditor on whose behalf the notice is given. So I just feel like that section is a little bit easier to read, but I'll continue reading out of the reference guide to regulatory compliance, where I left off. I read the content of the notice and reasons for adverse action, and I could have sworn I was reading about multiple applicants, actually. So let me scroll up for a second. Yes. Notification need only be given to one applicant, but it must be the primary applicant if known. Applications submitted through third parties. Each creditor who adversely acts on the application must send an adverse action notice. Guess that's a good way to put it. To cover all bases. F. Content of notification to consumers must be in writing. If the application is taken by telephone, must request the applicant's name and address for purposes of sending this notice. The notice must contain a statement of action taken, the name and address of the creditor, ECOA notice, name and address of federal agency that administers creditors' compliance with ECOA, statement of the specific reasons for the adverse action, or disclosure of the applicant's right to receive the specific reasons within 30 days of the request. The request for specific reasons must be made within 60 days of transmission of the adverse action notice. Roman numeral 3, specific statements should indicate principal reason or reasons for the action. A, statements that the action was based on internal credit policies are insufficient, and statements that the guarantor did not meet the creditor standards or did not have a qualifying credit score are insufficient. Roman numeral 4, disclosure of more than 4 reasons is not likely to be helpful to the applicant, and reasons must relate to and accurately describe factors considered or scored by the creditor. Disclosure of right to receive specific reasons must include name, address, and telephone number of the person or office from which a statement of reasons can be obtained. Notice, letter G, notice to business credit applicants. For businesses with gross revenues of $1 million or less in the preceding fiscal year, the bank must comply with the consumer notification requirements of Reg B, except that the statement of action taken may be given orally or in writing at the time the adverse action is taken. If given orally, the creditor must disclose the applicant's right to have the reasons for denial confirmed in writing within 30 days of a written request for information. B, this is how it differs from consumer disclosure of the applicant's right to specific reasons for adverse action may be given at the time of the application if it is in writing and contains the information required in the ECOA notice. And C, if the application is solely by telephone, the action taken may be disclosed orally. The applicant's right to a statement of reasons must also be given. And Roman numeral 2, for businesses with gross revenues of more than $1 million in the preceding fiscal year, the bank must notify the applicant orally or in writing within a reasonable period of time of the action taken and provide a written statement of specific reasons and the ECOA notice if the applicant makes a written request within 60 days of being notified of the adverse action. H, notice of incomplete applications. Roman numeral 1, the bank must send the following to an applicant within 30 days of receipt of an application that is incomplete. If the applicant can complete the information, that is important that so that financial institutions don't run the error of sending everyone a notice of incomplete application within 30 days just to make it easier on the bank to comply with Reg B. It actually does happen. Notice of action taken on application or notice of incomplete application can be sent within 30 days of an application that is incomplete. And 2, notice of incompleteness must specify the information needed, designate a reasonable time period to provide the information, and inform the applicant that failure to provide information requested will result in no further consideration being given to the application. Roman numeral 3, once notices of incompleteness is provided, creditor has no further obligation if the applicant fails to respond. And Roman numeral 4, if applicant provides the information and completes the application, the creditor must act on it and notify the applicant accordingly. Letter G is with regards to providing appraisals and other valuations. After that, we'll be discussing furnishing credit information and self-testing. And lastly, record retention and enforcement. But I will be recording these sections at a later time.